ever get that feeling, like that little spark of, hey, I'm really good at this, you know?
No, yeah.
Maybe it's baking those incredible pastries or like troubleshooting tech issues, almost like magic.
Uh-huh.
Or even just the way you tell stories that totally hook people in. Then you get that exciting thought like, wait, could I turn this into my own business?
Yeah.
Pretty electrifying, right?
Yes.
But today we're diving deep into a big question. Is passion and that technical skill all it takes to be a successful entrepreneur?
Okay.
We're using Michael E. Gerber's The E-Myth Revisited as our guide today. It's a book that's really shaken things up in the world of small businesses.
Yeah. The E-Myth Revisited is fascinating. It really digs into why so many small businesses fail, even when they're driven by so much talent and passion.
Right.
Gerber points out this huge assumption that so many aspiring entrepreneurs make without even realizing it. He calls it the entrepreneurial myth, and it really challenges what we instinctively believe about turning our skills into a thriving business.
So let's break down this entrepreneurial myth. What exactly is this fatal assumption that Gerber says trips so many of us up?
At the heart of it, the entrepreneurial myth is this belief that if you're amazing at the technical work of a business, like let's say you're a brilliant graphic designer, you'll naturally be great at running a graphic design business. It sounds so obvious, right?
It does.
Almost like the next logical step.
Yeah.
But Gerber says this is where a lot of would-be entrepreneurs get it wrong, and they don't even know it.
It makes sense though, right? You're a master plumber, so you open a plumbing company.
Right.
Or you're a fantastic gardener, so you start a landscaping business. Seems natural, doesn't it? But Gerber's saying this intuition can actually lead us in the wrong direction.
Exactly. The technical work itself, like creating a product or delivering a service, that's one skill set. Building and managing a business around that technical work requires a whole different set of skills. One is the how-to of the craft, and the other is the how-to of making the whole organization sustainable and profitable. This gap, this difference that often goes unnoticed, is what Gerber says is a major reason why small businesses struggle and fail.
Wow, that's a lot to think about. So whether you're dreaming of starting your own business, facing some tough challenges running one right now, or just curious about what makes businesses successful, this deep dive into the E-Myth Revisited is for you. We're not just summarizing the book.
No.
We're going deeper, extracting those aha moments that can change how you see your work and your dreams for your business.
Yeah, and if you think about it, have you ever felt that just because you're good at what you do, the business side of things will just work itself out?
Oh.
This deep dive helps us question that assumption. Even if you've been running your own business for years, there could be habits or mindsets holding you back. We're going to look at how to go from being just the technician doing the work to becoming a strategic entrepreneur who's working on the business.
I like it. So what's our plan for exploring the E-Myth today? What are the main points we'll be hitting?
Well, we're going chapter by chapter, breaking down Gerber's arguments and lessons. First, a summary of the core ideas, then deep dives into each chapter. We'll be looking at the crucial difference between working in your business as the technician and working on it as the entrepreneur and the manager.
Okay.
We'll also look at those 3 essential personalities Gerber says every business owner has and why balancing those is so important for success.
And I'm guessing we'll also talk about the typical life cycle of a small business.
Of course.
You know, from that initial energy to the more complex phases of growth.
Exactly. We'll trace that progression. Infancy, adolescence, and finally, maturity. A really central concept we'll be unpacking is what Gerber calls the franchise prototype.
Yeah.
I know, that makes you think of fast food chains.
It does.
But Gerber's point is it's actually a really powerful model for any successful business, regardless of whether you plan to franchise or not.
Interesting. So even if I just want to run a nice small bookstore, the idea of a franchise prototype is still relevant.
Absolutely. It's not about opening tons of locations. It's about building a business that runs systematically with predictable processes and results. We'll also be looking at how vital well-defined systems are.
Right.
The hard systems, soft systems, and information systems, because they create that predictability and ultimately profitability.
Makes sense.
And lastly, we'll touch upon the importance of having a crystal clear primary aim for your life and a strong strategic objective for your business. These should guide all your decisions.
Okay, a lot to cover. Let's jump right into Chapter 1, the entrepreneurial myth. We touched on the basics, but Gerber really paints a picture of this entrepreneurial seizure. What's that initial spark, that urge to start your own thing usually feel like?
It's like this incredibly strong desire, almost overwhelming. You want to break free from working for someone else and finally be your own boss.
Yeah.
It's a mix of excitement about independence, that dream of calling the shots, and the satisfaction of doing things your way.
Uh-huh.
It becomes this all-consuming vision. Once it grabs hold of you, starting that business feels less like a choice and more like something you absolutely have to do. Have you ever felt that pull? Like you just have to go for it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's like the idea just takes over.
Exactly. And it's in that moment of excitement, maybe even a little overconfidence, that the fatal assumption sneaks in. The technician, the one who's so skilled at their craft, mistakenly believes that being great at the technical work means they'll automatically be great at running a whole business around it.
Okay, so can you give us some specific examples Gerber's uses to drive this point home?
He uses those relatable, everyday examples, like the carpenter, who's amazing with wood, creating beautiful pieces.
Right.
He then pictures himself as a successful building contractor. He assumes that because he can handle a hammer and saw, he can also manage construction crews, handle complex finances, and market his services.
Uh-huh.
Or think of the incredibly talented baker whose cakes are legendary.
Okay.
She dreams of opening a bakery, thinking that her baking skills are all she'll need to manage staff, source ingredients, and handle the finances.
So it's like confusing the ability to make something amazing, the perfect chair or the delicious pie, with the skills needed to run a business that sells those things.
Exactly. And that's where the disconnect starts, and the problems too. Because running a business isn't only about the technical work anymore. Suddenly, the carpenter isn't just focused on woodworking. He's chasing unpaid invoices, negotiating with suppliers, and struggling to get new clients. All things he probably has no experience with and doesn't enjoy doing.
Right.
The baker, too. She finds herself not just baking, but managing inventory, dealing with customer complaints, and even cleaning up at the end of the day.
So overnight, their one focused job turns into a dozen different roles they're not familiar with and probably don't even want.
The business that was supposed to bring freedom ends up enslaving the owner. They're stuck trying to do the work they love while juggling all these other tasks they're not prepared for and probably hate. Gerber uses this really powerful story about the young woman baking pies to illustrate this.
Oh, yeah. That one sticks with you. Can you tell us about that?
This young woman, she's so passionate about baking, turns her skill into a pie business. She puts her heart and soul into every pie, working long hours.
Right.
But as her business grows, so do the demands that have nothing to do with baking. Admin tasks, problem solving, managing staff. Slowly, her joy and passion start to fade.
That makes sense.
Over time, this young, enthusiastic woman becomes an exhausted, overwhelmed, older woman.
Oh, wow.
Her initial spark is gone, replaced by the drudgery of running the business. She finds herself constantly thinking, what do I do now? Not really asking for help, just feeling lost.
Yeah.
The passion that started her business has been suffocated by the weight of trying to run it solely as a technician. Have you ever seen that happen? Someone's passion just completely drained by the reality of their business.
It's heartbreaking, but so common, yeah. It's a reminder that passion is essential, that initial spark. But it's not enough to sustain a business. You need real business skills and a strategic approach.
Right.
Now, Chapter 2 goes into the 3 personalities Gerber says exist in every business owner. Who are these key players inside our heads?
He introduces us to the entrepreneur, the manager, and the technician. He actually compares the struggles a business owner faces to someone trying to stick to a diet. He calls it the battle between the fat guy and the skinny guy.
Oh, I remember that. It's a great way to show how we have these conflicting desires pulling us in different directions. How does that connect to these business personalities?
It's just like someone trying to lose weight. They're torn between wanting to be healthier and wanting to indulge in treats. The business owner is juggling the needs and perspectives of the entrepreneur, the manager, and the technician.
Right.
We think we're making rational decisions as one person.
Yeah.
But in reality, these 3 personalities often have very different and sometimes clashing priorities. Recognizing this internal dynamic is the first step to getting them to work together.
Okay, so let's break down each of these personalities one by one. First up, the technician. What are they all about?
The technician is the doer. They love getting their hands dirty and believe that if you want it done right, do it yourself. They focus on the present, on the how-to of getting things done efficiently and to a high standard. They hate interruptions because it breaks their flow. They see the business as simply a bunch of tasks that need doing.
So, using our dickery example, the technician is the one who loves the feel of the dough, the precise measuring, the artistry of decorating.
Exactly. They get so much satisfaction from the physical act of baking. Now, let's contrast that with the entrepreneur. What drives them?
The entrepreneur is the dreamer, the visionary, always looking ahead, seeing opportunities where others might not.
Yes.
They're the ones pushing for innovation, always asking what if.
Precisely.
Yeah.
They're happiest when they're brainstorming new ideas, picturing a future bigger and bolder than the present.
Yeah.
They're not really concerned with the immediate realities or the details of execution.
Yeah.
In our bakery example, the entrepreneur is the one dreaming of new product lines, gluten-free options, maybe catering, even multiple locations. They're driven by the big picture, by growth and innovation. Does that resonate with how you think when you get an idea for a business?
Oh, definitely. It's that expansive thinking, that feeling that anything is possible. And lastly, we have the manager. What's their role in this?
The manager is all about order and structure. They're the pragmatist, focused on predictability. They learn from the past to create systems and processes that ensure consistency. They believe that if you want it done right consistently, you need to organize it. They usually come in to clean up the entrepreneur's mess of ideas, figuring out how to make those grand visions a reality.
So in the bakery, the manager would be the one making the baking schedules, managing inventory, and setting customer service standards. They want a smooth and organized operation.
Right. They crave order, predictability, and a clear process for everything.
Right.
Now, what Gerber emphasizes is that a truly successful business needs balance between these three personalities.
That makes sense.
The entrepreneur needs the manager to bring their ideas down to earth and the technician to execute the work.
Yeah.
But because they have such different priorities, they often clash within the owner, causing confusion and holding the business back.
It's like the entrepreneur wants to introduce an exotic new pie flavor. The technician wants to stick to the tried and true recipes. And the manager is scrambling to figure out how to source those new ingredients and train the staff on a new baking process without messing up the current workflow.
Exactly. It's a constant tug of war. Gerber says that until a business owner becomes aware of this internal dynamic and learns to balance these personalities, it's a battle no one can win.
This leads perfectly into Chapter 3, Infancy, the technician's phase. What defines this early stage of a business?
Infancy is when the business and the owner are basically the same thing.
Okay.
If you remove the owner, the business disappears. Think about those small businesses named after the owner, Joe's Place, Mary's Fine Foods. In this stage, the customers connect directly with the owner and their skills.
So the business's success is entirely dependent on the owner's technical skills and their personal effort.
Yes. In infancy, the owner is acting almost exclusively as the technician.
Right.
They're juggling everything.
Yeah.
The core work, sales, marketing, customer service, admin tasks. At first, their hard work and personal touch lead to happy customers.
It's like those early successes, people raving about Joe's amazing haircuts or Mary's delicious sandwiches.
Exactly. As word spreads and those initial successes build, demand increases. That sounds great, but in infancy, it can quickly become overwhelming for the owner.
Right.
They end up working longer and longer hours trying to keep up. That's when the first cracks appear. The quality might slip as they rush.
So the very things that made them successful initially, that high level of skill and attention to detail, start to decline because they're stretched too thin.
Exactly. They realize they can't do it all themselves, which leads to longer, more stressful hours and a feeling of always being behind. But from the technician's perspective, it's still just a bunch of tasks that need doing. So they try to work even harder, do even more themselves, and they get frustrated when they have to deal with the non-technical parts of the business.
They just want to get back to what they love, but the demands of running the business pull them in so many other directions.
And this is crucial. A business totally reliant on the owner's individual efforts isn't really a business. It's a job. And as Gerber says, often the worst job, because you're working for a lunatic yourself, driven by the crazy demands of the business you created.
Ouch. That probably hits home for a lot of listeners. So what's the fundamental problem with a business staying stuck in this infancy stage?
It's the lack of scalability and sustainability. Gerber says the real purpose of starting a business is not just to create another job for yourself.
Okay.
It's about getting freedom from a traditional job, creating opportunities for others, building something that can grow beyond your own limitations.
Right.
The technician's mindset, focused on just doing the work, prevents that growth.
So to move forward and become more than just a personal job, the technician needs to let go a little and let the entrepreneur and the manager step in.
Exactly. The business can't truly work until the owner shifts from doing all the work to building a system that does the work without their constant involvement. That transition can be tough, but it's essential.
Chapter 4 talks about adolescence, getting some help. What usually triggers this step in a business's life?
Adolescence usually begins when the owner finally admits they can't do everything themselves.
Right.
This leads to hiring their first employee, someone to take over some of the workload, especially tasks the owner can't handle or doesn't want to do anymore. Gerber introduces Harry as this first hire, that first step into having employees.
And it feels liberating for the owner, doesn't it?
Oh, it does.
I don't have to do that anymore. I can focus on what I'm good at.
That feeling of freedom is so common. It often awakens the manager personality, while the technician gets a bit of a break. But Gerber points out that this often leads to a problem. Management by abdication instead of true management by delegation.
Management by abdication, what's that?
It's when the owner just dumps tasks on the new employee, like Harry, without proper delegation, training, systems, or support. They might just say, Harry, you handle this now and walk away, assuming Harry will figure it out.
They're not really managing, just hoping for the best.
Exactly. And this lack of direction and systems leads to problems. Mistakes happen, deadlines are missed, customers complain, and the owner gets frustrated. They see the work not being done to their standards and get disappointed in Harry. Have you ever felt that? Like you delegated something and it just created more work for you in the end?
Oh yeah, totally. It makes you think, I should have just done it myself.
And that's the trap. The owner steps in to redo tasks, saying, give it to me, I'll do it myself, whether it's fixing errors or handling difficult customers.
Right. And the cycle gets worse. The more the owner does, the less the employee learns, and the owner feels like no one cares as much as they do.
Exactly. But Gerber's point is, the real problem isn't the employee, it's the owner's lack of management skills and systems.
So they need to shift from just doing the work to becoming a leader, a teacher, a system builder.
Exactly. To move past this chaotic adolescence, the owner needs to reawaken the entrepreneur to see a better way and cultivate the manager to develop the skills for delegation, training, and implementing systems. Without that, the owner is overworked, putting out fires, and the employees are underperforming because they don't have the guidance they need.
And in Chapter 5, we go beyond the comfort zone. How does adolescence push a business and its owner into this uncomfortable territory?
Every business that survives infancy and grows into adolescence eventually gets too big for the owner's comfort zone.
Yeah.
That zone where they feel in control. As the business expands, with more clients, products, employees, the owner starts to lose that sense of control. It's unsettling. Have you ever felt that? Like things are getting a bit too big, a bit out of hand.
Absolutely. It's like being on a runaway train.
Exactly. And the natural reaction is to retreat back to what feels safe and familiar.
Which, for most owners, is the technical work.
Right. They desperately want to regain control, so they go back to what they're good at. They hope that by focusing on the tasks they enjoy, the chaos elsewhere will magically disappear.
Okay.
They might delegate out of necessity, but they struggle to let go and trust their employees.
But, as we said, employees need more than just tasks. They need direction, purpose, clear responsibilities, and standards.
Right. They need a real manager, a leader, which the typical technician-turned-business owner often isn't ready to be. This lack of leadership and structure makes the problems even worse. Gerber talks about 3 potential paths for a business that's beyond the owner's comfort zone.
Okay, let's hear about these 3 paths. How does a business usually react when it's stretched too far?
The first path is getting small again. The overwhelmed owner, unable to cope with the chaos, decides to shrink the business back to a size they can manage themselves. They might lay off employees, stop seeking growth, basically limit the business to what they're comfortable handling.
It's a retreat to regain control, even if it means giving up on future growth.
Exactly. Gerber quotes, "Waiting for Godot. I can't go on like this." And the reply is, "That's what you think." It captures that feeling of being trapped but not being able to see a way out.
What's the second path?
It's going for broke. This happens when a business grows really fast, maybe because of a sudden increase in demand or a new technology. The excitement masks the underlying chaos. But Gerber says luck and speed aren't enough for success. The business can't handle the rapid growth because it's still in that adolescent mindset, lacking systems.
It's like the foundation can't support the rapid expansion and it all comes crashing down.
Exactly. The business explodes under its own weight. But the truth is, success needs more than just being in the right place at the right time. It needs a solid foundation.
What's the third path?
It's adolescent survival.
Yeah.
This is the saddest one.
Okay.
The business keeps going, but just barely. Through the owner's sheer effort. They fight the same battles every day, never fixing the underlying issues.
Yeah.
They're consumed by the business, terrified of losing it.
Right.
They pour all their energy into keeping it afloat,
It sounds exhausting. It's like they're headed for burnout.
Right. The business might not fail dramatically, but the owner will. Gerber asks a thought-provoking question here. Not how small should a business be, but how big can it become if it's structured correctly? He says the real limits to growth are often the owner's limitations, their lack of skills, knowledge, and even the passion for growing a business, not just keeping it alive.
So they need to shift from just surviving to actively planning and building the future they want.
Exactly. Gerber stresses the importance of writing down that vision. And the surprising thing is, very few small business owners actually do this kind of strategic planning. He assures us that there's a better way to approach starting and running a business, a way that leads to maturity.
That takes us to Chapter 6, Maturity and the Entrepreneurial Perspective. What defines a business in this mature stage?
Maturity is the third stage. Think of companies like McDonald's, FedEx, Disney.
Okay.
They're not just surviving. They understand how they got where they are and have a clear plan for the future.
So they have a deliberate and strategic approach to everything.
Exactly. And Gerber makes an important point. These businesses usually don't just stumble into this mature state. They start with a different perspective, what he calls the entrepreneurial perspective.
How is this entrepreneurial perspective different from the perspective of someone still in infancy or adolescence?
Gerber tells a story about Tom Watson Sr., the founder of IBM. When asked about IBM's success, Watson said he had a clear picture of what he wanted the company to look like in its final mature form.
Okay.
Second, he asked himself how a company like that would have to act.
Right.
And third, he knew that they had to start acting that way from the very beginning if they wanted to achieve that vision.
So it's about intentionally building the business based on a long-term vision, not just reacting to the day-to-day.
Exactly. IBM wasn't just about selling machines. They were building an institution. This contrasts with the technician's perspective, which focuses on what work needs to be done today and sees the business as a place for the technician to work and make money.
So the entrepreneurial perspective asks, how does this business need to work as a system to achieve the desired results and make a profit?
Exactly. The technician builds a business based on their past experience of just doing the work, which is the opposite of what's needed to be free from that work. The entrepreneurial model sees the business as a product, competing in the market and fulfilling customer needs in a unique way. To achieve this, we need to give our internal entrepreneur, manager, and technician models that work for them.
This leads to Chapter 7, The Turnkey Revolution, where Gerber talks about the business format franchise. Why is this model so important?
Gerber presents the franchise model as an example of a business designed to work predictably.
Okay.
He highlights how much more successful franchises are compared to independent businesses.
Makes sense.
The key difference between older trade name franchises, just buying the right to use a name, and the business format franchise is that the latter gives the franchise a complete system for running the business.
And of course, McDonald's is the classic example.
Exactly. Gerber talks about Ray Kroc shifting his thinking from selling hamburgers to selling the business system itself.
Interesting.
The franchisees weren't buying a way to make burgers. They were buying a proven model. Kroc's focus became making sure that system was great and successful for every franchisee, because if they were left to figure things out on their own, the consistency of the McDonald's brand would suffer.
So it wasn't just the food, it was the entire system for creating and delivering that food and the whole customer experience.
Exactly. Gerber then talks about how a skilled craftsperson might look down on a big operation like McDonald's.
Right.
But he argues that the spirit of a craftsperson dedicated to quality and an entrepreneur building a scalable system are actually very similar. The difference is the scale and the method. Ray Kroc basically franchised his way of running a restaurant.
Which leads us to Chapter 8, the franchise prototype. It's not really about becoming a franchise, but about using those principles to build any successful business.
Right. The franchise prototype, in a broader sense, is a model where the system runs the business and the people run the system.
So the system is the solution to problems, not relying on finding brilliant people to solve every issue.
Exactly. To illustrate this, Gerber talks about the specific details of the McDonald's system. The exact holding times for fries and burgers.
Okay.
The standardized patty size, the pickle placement, the goal of serving every customer quickly.
Yeah.
It's all about discipline, standardization, and predictability.
It's about creating a consistently good experience for every customer every time.
Exactly. And this model balances the needs of the entrepreneur who sets the vision, the manager who creates order, and the technician who does the work within the system.
Okay.
Gerber argues that this is at the core of every great business, franchised or not. Every successful business is essentially a franchise of its own system.
Chapter 9 then focuses on working on your business, not in it. How does the franchise prototype help with this shift?
The first step is understanding that your business should serve your life, not the other way around.
Okay.
Once you get that, you can work on your business, not just in it, using the franchise prototype. This means building an expert system, not just hiring experts.
So the focus shifts to the system, and people are trained to use it.
Right. Great businesses are built by ordinary people achieving extraordinary things through effective systems. The system makes up for any gaps in individual skills and creates a unique advantage for the business. Your job becomes developing those systems and teaching your people how to use them.
Chapter 10 introduces the business development process. What is that?
It's a step-by-step method to turn your business into that well-organized franchise prototype.
Okay.
It involves three main activities: innovation, quantification, and orchestration.
So let's break those down. What does innovation mean in this context?
It's not just about big new ideas. It's about constantly asking, what's the best way to do this for every single thing in your business? Answering the phone, processing orders, following up. It's about always looking for improvements based on what your customers need and expect. It's a never-ending process.
It's about a culture of continuous improvement, always thinking about the customer. What about quantification?
It's about measuring the impact of those innovations.
Mm-hmm.
You need to track results to see what's actually working.
Right.
Without measurement, you're just guessing. Even small changes can have a big impact, but you need data to prove it. What metrics do you think businesses should track in your field?
It's about having those concrete numbers. And lastly, orchestration. What's that about?
Orchestration is about eliminating unnecessary choices at the operational level. Once you've found the best way to do something and measured its success, you need to standardize it across the business.
Makes sense.
If things are done differently by different people, it leads to inconsistency and unpredictability.
Right.
Orchestration is about creating order, which Gerber says is something people crave. Think about how reassuring it is when you know exactly what to expect from a business.
It's about making those best practices repeatable by anyone.
Exactly. And this process, innovation, quantification, orchestration, isn't a one-time thing.
Okay.
It's an ongoing cycle of improvement.
In Chapter 11, we get the 7 steps to a turnkey operation. Are these the steps to implement this process?
Yes, Gerber presents these as a roadmap to build that franchise prototype. They are. Defining your primary aim, strategic objective, organizational strategy, management strategy, people strategy, marketing strategy, and system strategy.
So let's go through them, starting with your primary aim in Chapter 12. What is that and why is it so important?
Your primary aim isn't just about business goals.
Okay.
It's about your ultimate life goals, what you truly want to achieve in your life, beyond the business. Gerber suggests imagining your own funeral.
Wow, okay.
How do you want to be remembered? Your business should support those aspirations, not be the only thing in your life. He asks questions to help you define your primary aim, your lifestyle, financial needs, relationships, personal growth. He emphasizes having these standards to measure your life against.
So it's about aligning your business with your deepest values and aspirations.
Exactly. Without knowing your primary aim, how can your business help you achieve it?
That's a good point. Chapter 13 moves on to your strategic objective. How does this connect to the primary aim?
Your strategic objective takes those broad life goals from your primary aim and turns them into measurable standards for your business.
Okay.
It's a blueprint for your business's future. He says these standards are for action, not just thinking. There are 2 key standards: money and your ideal customer.
Let's talk about the money standard first. What financial things should a business owner define?
You need to set targets for revenue, profits, gross, pre-tax, maybe even after-tax. It's hard to predict these accurately, especially early on. But Gerber says having any standards is better than none. These financial goals aren't just numbers. They're what will fuel your primary aim.
And the second standard is an ideal customer. How do you define that?
Gerber talks about creating a central demographic model, a profile of your best customer.
Okay.
Their age, gender, income, job, all that.
Yeah.
But he says it's even more important to understand their psychographics, the emotional reasons why they buy. He uses a Chanel perfume ad as an example. They focus on fantasy and emotion, not just the scent.
So it's not just who your customer is, but why they buy from you. This chapter also ties back to Zara and her pie business, right? She realizes her aunt wasn't just teaching her to bake. She was teaching her about passion and putting her heart into her work.
Exactly. This helps Sarah define her strategic objective. She pictures having 4 locations, all with the same name, focused on